Hi, I'm April, and today I'm going to be making for you Southern cornbread dressing. And this is a type of dressing that you could eat at Christmas or Thanksgiving with turkey, or you could make and freeze and use anytime you have roasted chicken or anything like that. This recipe was handed down actually through my ex-husband's family. Granny Spence has made this all of her adult life. She's 96 years old, still going strong, and every Thanksgiving and Christmas you better believe she's in the kitchen making sure that this gets done right. This is a unique dressing in that we use cornbread, which a lot of people don't use. This recipe actually starts the day before. You need to make about 4 batches of cornbread, and by batches I mean Jiffy cornbread kits, or in the South we use something called corn kits. So 4 of those in 1 to 2 containers of biscuits. Now Granny used to always say buy the cheapest biscuits, the store brand, those will do just fine. But whatever you can find. I just happen to use a canister of Grand Southern Style. So you make those the day before. You put them in a container, but don't seal the container all the way. You want them to dry out some because you're going to be putting a lot of liquid in this recipe, so you want them to be a little bit stale so they absorb that liquid better. So I've already started the process. The first step is to get a roasting pan and make sure you cover it in cooking spray so things don't stick. And you just start tearing to shreds the cornbread and the biscuits. And favorite thing around my house was to call the kids in and say, kids, come take care of the cornbread and the biscuits. And they love getting their hands in this, and they can't mess it up. So it's fun for them. They love doing that and remember it to this day. But you basically take cornbread, it will just disintegrate. You just get it to its grainy consistency there. The biscuits, just make them very small bits. We don't want any big chunks. And the great thing about this too is everything just gets done right in this container. So you don't have 6 or 7 bowls that you have to wash. It's just all right here. And I do recommend a big container like this. You're going to want to freeze this and use it and have it later in the year with something else. A little bit more. Basically what you want is about 75 to 70% cornbread and the rest biscuit. So I've made a few more biscuits than I probably need. I'll probably do 1 more and that'll be all. You want it mostly cornbread. There's really not a ton of ingredients in this, and it's pretty simple, which makes it so easy to make and a great family favorite that's not too much time in the kitchen. Okay, so once you do that, you're just going to make sure it's all mixed together. Biscuits and the cornbread. And you see it takes up most of the pan, but of course when we add the liquid that'll change. Okay, and as I said, everything goes in this pan. I have here 5 eggs, so already cracked, just put them right in. You take 1 white onion, a whole large onion, and then the equivalent of that in celery. So if it comes out to about a cup, then you'll have about a cup of celery. And that goes right in. You will need to have about a can of carnation milk, although don't pour all of it in at the beginning, just a little bit. And here's the chicken broth. The chicken broth is probably the trickiest part because you're going to use a lot of it, but I can't tell you exactly how much you're going to use. It's one of those things that as we go through this recipe, you will see that it depends on the consistency. And that's a good thing for me to mention right now. The consistency is not going to be what you normally think dressing is. It is not going to be something you could slice or cut. That's way too thick, way too much. It's going to be more like mashed potato consistency once it's all done. So right now, we are going to pour some chicken broth in. Again, I can't tell how much, so I'll start off with about half the container. Maybe a little more there. All right, salt. And this is something you add some, and then you're going to have to test it, add a little more. Some pepper. And then the thing that's going to make this the best dressing ever is some ground sage. And if you buy a container about this size, you're probably going to use the whole container. I spent many Thanksgiving and Christmas in my childhood hearing, more sage, more sage. So it's definitely the ingredient that you need to give it that flavor of Granny's cornbread dressing. So you're just going to mix it up. And I already see I need more chicken broth. When it starts out, it's going to be pretty soupy. It'll harden, but again, we don't ever want it to get just incredibly hard. We're going to add just a little bit of sugar. Granny seems to add a little bit of sugar to everything, and it makes it good, so I'm not going to argue. That was about 1 to 2 tablespoons. We're not trying to make it sweet, but just a little bit. Okay, it's still pretty cakey, so I'm going to make sure I add more carnation milk. Go ahead and add that. And a little more chicken broth. See, this is what I say. You never know how much chicken broth you're going to need. And chicken broth is actually something you're going to add to it as you're cooking it if it gets to be too hard. Okay, I'm going to need a lot more. You've got a lot of bread in here, so it's really absorbing that liquid. It's going to be soupier than you think, so don't be afraid of that. There we go. Now it's starting to get the right consistency. Okay, now I'm going to do something some of you may feel uncomfortable doing, but even though it has raw eggs in it, you have to taste it. You have to make sure that you see if it's got the right amount of sage, the right amount of the consistency with the liquid. A lot more sage. Like I said, you'll probably use the entire container. But we added a little bit at once. Seems like a lot of salt, but we've got a lot of bread in there, so. Okay. Looks really soupy. And even so, I'm going to add a little more. It's a delicate balance. You don't want to add so much that it disintegrates, but it needs to be really soupy at the beginning because it will harden with cooking. Stir it a little bit more, and then I'll do another taste test to make sure that I've got enough sage in there. More. Again, don't be afraid. You'll use the entire container. It'll be worth it, I promise. And usually this batch, if it's just me, my kids, my partner, then usually this will make more than we ever need. So I will freeze a lot of it. Okay, just make sure you get the sage evenly distributed there. See the great color of the celery. And see the brown bits of the cornbread. It's really a pretty dish. Okay, I'm going to do one more, but I know I'm going to need more sage. It's getting there, but more. All right, and that emptied the container, so we're about where we need to be here. I'm going to put in, I've got a little chicken broth left. This finishes off our second box, so that lets you know how much chicken broth you need. It is is really soupy and it needs to be, so don't be afraid of that again. All right, we're ready to put this in the oven. This is one, it only cooks for an hour, hour and 20 minutes, but you're going to check on it about every 15 minutes because you're going to need to scrape the sides, make sure it's not sticking, and probably at least a couple of times add some more chicken broth because you don't want it to get like a cake. It should never get that thick. It should be mashed potato consistency. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the oven. And you can see just how liquidy it is, and that's fine. Okay. So let me put my lid on. We are going to cover it. You'll need to make sure that you probably at least take out the top rack of your oven because with this size of a roaster, it's going to take up a lot of room here. Okay. So we'll check back with it in about 15 minutes. Give it a stir. See if we need to add chicken broth. We may not that soon, but maybe at the 30-minute mark we might need to. So now it's just wait and make sure that we have enough liquid in it. Okay, we're back to our southern cornbread dressing. It's been in the oven about an hour, so we're going to check it. It could be done, so we definitely want to see if it's the right consistency. All right, oh, it's looking good. You can see how, even though we added and ended up adding probably a total of 1.5 cups of chicken broth to it, it's perfect mashed potato consistency. Okay, it would plop on your plate just like a mashed potato would. This is perfect. All right, so we're going to take it out of the oven here. And this is something, if you leave it in this container with the lid on, it's going to stay warm for a while. So if you need to finish up some other things for Thanksgiving dinner, it'll be able to sit for a while. When you reheat, you might have to add a little bit of chicken broth. Don't add too much because at that point we've added so much we don't want it to disintegrate. But a little bit of chicken broth when you reheat, and you're good to go. Thank you for letting me share Granny's Southern dressing recipe with you.